Welcome back. And we're doing a couple Fridays in a row for this aggressively healthy podcast. And today, unbeknownst to the audience, a little surprise guest, Mark Feda. So Mark Feda is a PT specializing, board certified in ortho and sports PT. Only 7 in the state carry those accolades. There's a lot of big letters and dots and big letters behind his name. But what I want to let you know is one big thing. So he's a PT specialist. We're trying to, and we're going to integrate him into the programming here of our healthcare facility. With that being said, without kind of delaying, we're going to enter into a conversation and try to discuss and define terms for people in terms of the PT, exercise, medicine world. The biggest, hottest topic that we want to come out and kind of zoom really far away from and then hone in on is why most fitness and healthcare models don't deliver outcomes. They promise you something, there's a result you want, and that outcome doesn't get delivered. So before we dive into the huge topics and get talking really big, Mark, do you mind giving us a little intro, where you're from, how you started, how you got involved in PT, and what your personal interest in kind of what we're doing and how your personal interest in what Mike did, just like me, inspired you to go, hey, Mike, why don't we do this? Because really, it comes down to Mike being the foundation and root of all of this, and we kind of are adding on. So how do you feel, and what's your mission statement and goals of kind of what you want to accomplish?
Yeah, man. So I'll start first just kind of like with my background, because I think really the biggest thing, for most professionals that get into the field of physical therapy, or really in healthcare in general, is like we had an experience, right? And we genuinely care about people. So, my background, especially on the PT side, was, I was the injured athlete, right? So I played hockey growing up. My first exposure to physical therapy was during my senior year at prep school. I separated my AC joint, in the middle of my season, my last season playing prep hockey, right? Trying to play at the collegiate level. Yep. And it was like, time to recovery. Like, I want to get back. I want to be able to play, and I want to do it as quickly as possible. So, we, again, got a referral for PT. I had an awesome PT who, oddly enough, was also a college hockey player. So I was like, this is pretty badass, right? And, that kind of shaped the experience. Yeah. I got better quicker, right? I got back. I was able to play. And I was like, as I kind of took the 10,000-foot view, looking back on it, like, that was, like, impactful in my life, saying, like, hey, like, this is an awesome field. Like, I get to, like, work with athletes. I get to help people get better. It's like all the things that I kind of, like, was in my own constitution, right, of, like, who I wanted to be, right? And then just kind of, like, you go through the whole schooling process. You start, essentially, like, working. Like, the typical path for us, for PTs, I should say, in the field, is that you come in and you work for large corporations, right? And we'll talk a little bit more about, like, some of the negative structure of that type of environment. But really, for me, it was like, I wanted to, as we kind of relate it back to the model, and like what we're trying to do here is really kind of centered around the fact that it's like, hey, listen, there's a better way of doing things, right? All this alphabet soup that you went through and, kind of spattered off at the beginning of this, like, I got all those things not for pad my own self and my own personal pride, but to help my patient base, to help my client base, right? So every letter, every course that I went through and took was to make me better at what I do, to help the community around me.
Passionate.
Right?
And
that's it.
Something you said, I don't want to get sidetracked this early, but you said something pretty interesting. Your first interaction was with a PT who also played hockey. From that day forward, you were inspired by him, which is an individual. You have made mention that in high school, you got taken under a wing of somebody who was in the Olympic lifting world and started teaching you. So you had an experience that was like, oh, this person inspired me to do that. The craziest part, and the reason I got to say it, is it's kind of nuts to say this out loud on this podcast, and I'm not just saying because he's here. But for me, it's kind of like what you were, right? I had interacted with doctors. I had interacted with people that were somewhat inspiring to get me to do whatever type of healthcare. And then I was like, oh, Mike is delivering something that's so stable and so good and so foundationally healthy. Why don't I do that too? And it's nuts because I was 39. I was an MD. I'd gone to school for years. I'd had so many life lessons. And it came down to somebody I knew for however many years to be the person that was like, oh, That's what I want to do. But everybody needs that inspiration. And I think it's an amazing thing, which is why what we're doing to me is so special. Because even if we can touch one person like that, you change their whole life. Your entire life changed. From high school, you Olympic lifting, your entire life changed. I mean, I was heading down a path for demise. There's no way around it, right? Like drinking, hanging out. It was just a bad news scenario. Why? Because I didn't realize what I was doing. I was so stressed about everything else, stuck in a system that was so terribly confining that it took me coming to a gym with a guy I knew forever, a best friend forever, to open up my eyes to that, right? And I want everyone just to realize, like, those interactions are important, and we should take them seriously as the leadership, because you are affecting everybody who watches everything you do. Back to you, sorry. Rental fee of a gym we talked about last week. Space occupation with no instruction. What is that, right? Talk to me a little bit between the two of you. First of all, can you define truly the difference between like Mike's expertise and Mark's expertise in terms of overlap for what we call as traditional PT versus modern PT? And then the second thing is where that model is kind of integrating naturally and how we are just going to allow that natural integration not to be broken by ego with humility, right? And that's how we will move forward. So any thoughts on kind of the future of this?
So if there was a organization that would employ all of us, MD, PT, coach, right? There would be very much a totem pole structure. MD's at the top, and then PT, and then this guy, and then that guy, and then that guy. Where we are kind of just flipping it on its side, and there's really no up and down, it's just a cross, which allows us to see from our unique vantage points the same problem, but we're probably thinking about the problem differently. And instead of keeping that siloed, we share those ideas, those thoughts, those opinions, and then we can put together an actual comprehensive plan of attack, leveraging the unique skills and abilities and knowledge of each of us. So I think that's, you know, from a really zoomed out view, that's the difference in any of the context that we talk about. And that's also why we deliver what we deliver and format it the way that we want to.
And kind of the intro to PT or intro to healthcare should not be top-down funnel from an MD. Like, I shouldn't find sick people sick enough to send to you. You should find people that need exercise as an entry point into health, and then you should send them to me.
Let me ask Mark a question, because he dealt with so many, let's just say, orthopedic injuries as a physical therapist. How many times did you get on the horn with an orthopedic surgeon and he says, "This is what I think he should do for physical therapy"?
Oh, that's a never.
But when did you ever call the surgeon and be like, "This is how you're going to do the surgery"?
Right.
They would be insulted to the nth degree. But they don't have the wherewithal to say that to you or how I should train someone. You know what I mean? Because it's just this thought that they know the best and know everything, and they read a research paper once on a rotator cuff.
Certainly.
You know,
certainly. So I think it comes back and the kind of the descriptive picture that you gave of kind of taking the structure, right? The vertical structure.
Totem pole,
right? And then kind of turning it horizontal, right? Because it's a communication going like back and forth at all times, right? We all have different scopes, and we're all great at our individual scopes, right? I think a lot of the time what winds up happening in the traditional model is that like everybody kind of stays in their lane, right? And then like nobody communicates, nobody talks about things, right? So it talks about like communicating around the patient in terms of like what they actually need, right? So like everybody, essentially is operating in a vacuum, right, so to speak, right? And we're just expecting the patient to improve and get better, right? In a model where it's like, we have this kind of horizontal focus, each of the individuals get to use their scope at the highest level with communication as the forefront. Like that's the biggest piece.
It's the only thing that matters.
It's the only thing that matters in this scenario, right? And then what that enables us to do is that as we're communicating back and forth on like, hey, these were the labs on this patient. This is what his, strength routine is shaping up, or where we want to go over the next 4 weeks. This is where like the structural and physical conditions that we're currently working around are putting. We can now come together as one and say like, all right, these are the better decisions that we're going to make to help guide this individual. Right? Like that's really the focus. And it's really what should be the focus across the board.
Yeah, and like the natural progression. you know, it's in quotations on our little note sheet here. Today we're unpacking why integration changes everything and why we've brought physical therapy into our ecosystem. Now, saying out loud to the listeners or the public and whoever wants to know that we're bringing PT in is actually a little bit of like a fake statement because we already have PT. Exercise is physical therapy. I don't understand what the word physical therapy means. Can you guys maybe define that for me, right? Because to me, physical therapy means the minute I open my eyes and start walking, I'm undergoing some sort of physical therapy. Like if I'm interacting with a coffee, that might be therapeutic to my physicality. I don't know. What for the listener is a true definition of physical therapy in your mind? Because the traditional definition might be different.
Right. Well, you know, I'll speak, like, let's just go back really quickly to like the origin. Like, where did physical therapy as a profession come from? And if you look back, you know, to essentially when we first kind of started seeing this profession show up, it was after World War II. Right, so you have servicemen coming home.
He's a real nerd, by the way.
I love history.
I couldn't tell. Yeah. I couldn't tell, buddy.
I love it.
Sorry, keep going.
Fantastic.
World War II.
So World War II, you know, so you have servicemen coming home. They're blown up. They're dismembered. And really a lot of it was around like amputees, right? So like that became kind of like this big thing, and then they realized that over the course of time that it's like, oh, like we can fix your crappy shoulder, right? Like that wasn't amputated or shot at or something like that. And now that becomes the, you know, kind of the you know, emphasis or the entryway to like what this profession actually, where it actually started, right? So the you know, the thought process is like, as we're looking at, you know, what we do in physical therapy, right? In the realm of physical therapy, we're just really leveraging principles, right? Principles of healing. Right. And I mean, there's a few governing principles that really kind of like dictate how an individual will get better. OK, you know, a simple principle is like the nervous system governs everything. Right. Like that's really kind of an oversight. Right. Yep. You probably won't hear most PTs reference this because I don't even know if they really understand that, you know, that concept.
Or think about it.
Or even think about it. Right. Like, you know, when you go into school, like everything is kind of constructed into like segmented portions. So you learn the nervous system. You learn the musculoskeletal system, and they don't talk to each other. Why would they go through and do that? Like, you know, so it's members of all one system, right?
That's an interesting statement because even like anatomy in med school, they make it seem like the nerves, arteries, veins, all of it's kind of separated because it's on different pages, but it's really not. Yeah. So it all communicates.
It's all integrated, right? So like, you know, back to like that being a guiding principle there, another guiding principle is that like, if we're going to really try to change something structurally to heal it, like I have a tendonitis. I need that tendon to, you know, be stronger and not be painful and, you know, move better, right? Yep. Well, in order for me to like change that, like actually structurally, histologically change that, I got to load that thing. So what's loading? Loading is working out, right? Yeah. It's putting it under stress. It's putting it under, you know, a force curve, right? And then manipulating those variables. So to your question on like, you know, like what's the, you know, like where's the line of, I don't know, demarcation or whatever between PT and physical therapy? It really, personal training or training and physical therapy is that there really is no, it's the same thing.
Fundamentally.
It's the same exact thing. It's just like, really, it's like, where are you operating, you know, in the course of training the individual?
And
you know?
Here's an interesting thing. If you look at life, you're born, and the statement to the population is, you have a right to health. The reason you can trap people in that statement, it's actually one of the best marketing reverse psychology things I've ever seen pulled. If you tell somebody you have the right to health, right, you then immediately assume that everything that breaks is not your fault. Now, if you have been given the opportunity by the institution to remove accountability from yourself because you have the right to have something, and now that something isn't there, then you blame an outside party. The blame on the outside party gets essentially that desire quenched with the healthcare system they give you, because there's a pill that will give you a response. There's an intervention, a surgery that will be like, oh, it hurts, it's getting better. So they keep playing this like desire response thing. And the fulfillment from their end is there every time, because every time something breaks, they give you medicine for it. So the sick care system, just like PT originally started, like if you hurt your arm, I remember in college, I would like irritate something. They'd be like, give it a week to rest. And it's like, even at the time, I remember being like, why would I not want to move my leg? And every morning I wake up, it's way more stiff than when I went to bed. So clearly movement wasn't hurting it yesterday. So conceptually, that old school PT thought was real off balance. Talk to me, and you've been a proponent of this forever, injury and then movement immediately after injury. Talk to me about the progression from the PT world taking care of those injuries to like the integration even between you two, because really for me, I'm out of the musculoskeletal stuff in terms of movement activity. Chemically, that's different. But how do you then transition those people into learning like, you don't really have a right to your health, you got to work for it, but part of that work is the movement end of it, even if you're not injured. So where do we push that on people?
Yeah, I'll comment on that first because I think this is like the exact battle that I think we fight with most patients that I work with, right? Like when people come in to see me and they seek us out, right? They're generally in pain.
Yep.
I'd probably say 95% of people are like in pain, right? The other 5%, maybe there's like something not working right. They're not in pain, but like I'm not strong. I just something feels weird, something feels off, right? I think the reality is that most of the individuals that come in and seek out a service line like our service line are looking for us as the individual to do something to them. So like a passive intervention that's going to make them feel better.
Yep.
Right? So part of the education piece that we have to do to kind of move, it's really like a shift of the pattern of their thinking, right? Is that like, okay, yeah, there are going to be certain things that I can do, whether it's like release a tissue, drop a needle in things, mobilize something, whatever the heck it may be, passively for them.
Yep.
That's going to create a window of opportunity for where I consider like the real work to begin. Right? We have to move them back to doing something physical. They have to take ownership of how they move their joints, how they strengthen the tissue around them,
Yep.
right? So really like everything that we go through and do from a physical standpoint really kind of opens up this window where then we can lead them into training. Once we get them trained enough that they're now capable of saying like, oh, like I had a change on my own crappy back.
Right.
Like I did this drill and I was like, that feels better now.
Yeah.
Cool. Now we get to go deeper in the continuum. We get to progress, and then that's where it leads into the training aspect of things.
Right.
It's like now it's like, cool, let's build capacity now. Let's
And
get stronger.
talk about capacity, because PT, I think, is a capacity issue.
No, totally.
Right? So you don't get injured if you can handle capacity. Me and you just had a lengthy discussion about this yesterday in terms of work range between that movement, like 40 degree or 60 degrees up to like 160-ish, right? Strength in that plane, in that range of motion. But it all comes down to movement tolerance. So from your end of it, how do you then transition these people, right, from an injury, say, introductory PT into a full-blown like, hey, now you realize what got you out of the injury. Here's what's going to prevent you from going back into the injury.
So I'm going to back up a minute, because as the only true non-medical provider, I think this is where a lot of people get it wrong. So no matter what we're looking at, when we're talking about capacity, we have to reference some kind of baseline. So most of the time, 95% of the time is what you said, most of the time people see you when they're in pain. How many people did you do surgery on that felt great?
Yeah, none.
You know what I mean? So like clearly there was a regression from whatever their baseline was.
Yeah.
The assumption is A, that baseline was good to begin with, and then B, getting back to that baseline is good too. But the standard of that baseline has become so low, whether that we're talking about hormonal baseline, tissue tolerance baseline, physical capacity or work output, all those baselines just continue to drop. So just getting back to where they started, which means if they encounter the same type of environment, they're going to just get hurt again or get sick again.
Yep.
That's the standard of getting them back. And then what do they get? Cleared.
Right.
They get cleared to go back to work. They get cleared to return to sport. They get cleared to whatever, not take their medication. But if we're not fixing or enhancing that baseline, we're always going to be playing that game.
And you're brilliantly saying it, but it's really easy to say out loud, and I say it about doctors all the time. It's complacency. And
100%.
death and injury love complacency. And the minute you become complacent with your health, which is what everybody does because they've been given the right to be healthy, you start breaking down. So it's almost like, how do you impose on them the work you're doing today isn't to get you better, it's so that tomorrow you don't wake up worse.
Right. And this is why I think it's such a tremendous failure, is that people think of Mark only when they get hurt, or a physical therapist, not necessarily you.
Right.
They only think of a doctor when they're sick.
Yeah.
The point is, you don't have to be sick to get better. You don't have to be hurt to go see a doctor or to see a physical therapist, but because people have been conditioned to only relate or associate your professions with pain, dysfunction, sickness, illness, whatever, is the biggest travesty, because we all are trying to promote and enhance baseline living.
Right.
At just different levels.
Yep.
Right? So like, I'd much rather, and we'll get into this, someone who sees you because they know if they don't, they will feel worse.
Right.
They just don't feel bad right now.
Yeah.
Right? They go to you so they don't have to take Lipitor in 5 years.
Yep.
You know what I mean? So like, it is that proactive, aggressively healthy kind of mindset that we're now positioning your professions. That's always been like, people never went to a strength and conditioning coach to get weaker and slower. They went to build capacity and build output.
Yeah.
Like, that was already part of the game for me.
Like yesterday, I had a moment where I said to somebody out loud, I was like, we're offering a really good deal, all inclusive, the medical and a fitness evaluation. The fitness evaluation is a 6-week with one-on-ones and all this stuff. And at one point, I was saying this out loud, and I love the thing, and I'm not saying our business plan isn't bad with that offering. I'm just saying, I stopped myself at one point. I was a little bit frustrated by things she had been saying. And I was just like, do you want to live quality or do you not? It's that simple. And she was like, what do you mean? I was like, you just got to tell me if you do or don't. Because really it comes down to the fact of how much effort we're going to put into this, right? Because if you buy all in, your metabolism will change. If you don't, it won't. But the funny thing is, people look at it as like, well, how long do I have to do this? Hey, motherfucker, like, how long do you want to live?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I don't know what else to tell you. I know that sounds raw. Yeah, I swore, but that's actually how ridiculous in my mind it is.
Yeah.
Right? If you're walking down a road and the road ends and there's a cliff you're going to walk off, you would never blindly just keep walking. But we are plenty okay with like physicality and healthcare until something breaks. The traditional healthcare sells visits, the traditional gym sells volume memberships that they actually try to trick you into not realizing you're paying for it. It's like the scummiest thing I can think of. But how do you allow people to reverse the normal way of thought? And this is the normal way of thought. I see Mike, I see Mark, I see Marco. I got so much better. I learned so much. I'm going to go do this on my own. Mm-hmm. How do we reverse that trend to let people realize, just like CMEs, continuing medical credits, like in exercise, nutrition world, PT, like you have to stay up to date on your things and learn more and what. How do you disengage with a professional after you've just gained so much ground and think you're going to go do it yourself? The flow should be reversed. How do we impart that on people? Because I think the PT exercise world going like this is how we get those people to realize that movement is medicine, and their continuing health, physical therapy education that they should be up to speed on is required to go to the gym or some exercise facility for X amount of time per unit volume, right? How do we get them to buy into that?
Well, I think it ties back into the point that Mike just made around, like, you know, this concept of, you know, not waiting until you're broken to, you know, seek out care, right? Or seek out you know, guidance, really, right? Because at that point it's not care to an extent, because you're not hurt. We're not maybe rehabilitating things, but what we're doing is we're identifying scenarios that could potentially be problematic, right? Like if I could tell you through an assessment that like your shoulder's going to be messed up, right, potentially, and we can look at it and say like, hey, it's not painful right now. You're maybe getting some warning signs. It's stiff, restricted, whatever, right? Maybe you're feeling some weakness while you're working out. We go through an assessment and say, hey, Mike, like based off of what I'm going through and seeing here, you don't really have the range of motion to do this exercise, that activity, this thing, right? Let's maybe go through and take a step back, modify what you're doing, right? So this way you don't get hurt. You don't
Yep.
keep stressing the tissue in a negative way. And then while we're going through and doing it, let's work on the shoulder. Let's go through and or the system, and like let's figure out what we need to do to get it more mobile, to get it stronger locally, right? So I think how we kind of tie that in, and this is actually oddly enough, this is why I love the specific like business model that I'm in right now currently, because we get to operate outside of the realm of insurance influence on things, right?
Yeah.
So insurance would dictate that, like when somebody comes in, like if I'm seeing them for a shoulder issue, I gotta treat their shoulder. I can't touch their back. I can't touch their hip. I can't touch their ankle.
Yep.
But all those things may be influencers on like why they're having a shoulder problem, right? I can't. You don't really get billed for kind of like what I would consider kind of like psychological guidance on
Right.
things, but that's like a huge component of what we do.
Huge.
Right? And really for me, like there's a large construct of business that I do that's preventative in nature, meaning like I've got people that come in and see me that have never gotten hurt. They just want to know more about their body. They're inquisitive naturally.
Yeah.
And they want to try to stay ahead of things, right?
Yep.
They want to, back to your point, like we want longevity. If longevity is the purpose, right? Not only living longer, but living better longer.
Quality
right?
is all of it,
That's
right.
all that matters, right?
Yep.
So like if I can identify,
Actually, let me just say one thing. I think longevity is good. Longevity is the current sick care system play.
Correct.
Quality is our play, but like you said, with quality, you're going to have longevity like no matter what.
Right.
If you buy a new car and you keep it new every day it's a new car.
yes.
Same thing with with the human body.
The car analogy is fantastic because that's like literally that's an analogy that I will literally use with my clients.
Yeah.
It's like you take your car in every 3 months to get your oil changed,
Yeah.
right? Depending on how much you drive it. Like, why wouldn't you have a check-in on your body?
Yeah.
Right? Like that's the most important thing you could possibly spend money on.
But it's a big lost art because they buy health insurance.
Correct.
Fragmentation. Okay. Fragmentation in medicine is an issue. So I'm going to go from the MD outlook. We used to always have rounds, which were mixed team rounds, say oncology, cancer screening, or cancer care. And you'd meet with the oncologist, hematologist, the radiation specialist, the surgeon, the internal med doc, and everybody would sit around the table and you come up with a plan. That integration was being attempted, but it was still very fragmented. How do we solve the problem in a facility like this? You mentioned it. PT might work on the shoulder, but then the trainer does something bad with the ankle and they don't communicate. Whereas like if it's all in one scope, because it's really not two different things, it's more just nuance of one big thing, which I'm going to say as a doctor without an ego, like you are just as, you said before, you're not a healthcare provider. You're as much of a healthcare provider as me. You've probably actually made more people healthy than most surgeons in this state. Literally, I'm not kidding you. Like sick people go for surgery and then they stay sick. They just don't have a broken thing.
Yeah.
Like if your heart was broken because you ate cheese all day and you leave with a new heart or a new valve or whatever, but you're still eating cheese all day, it doesn't fucking matter. So the fragmentation in that world is just, it's in disarray. How do we prevent those re-injuries, the load mismanagement, the slower progress, the adjusting, the shared programming, and all of those things in this new model? Because are we potentially looking to maybe be the healthcare facility of the future, so much so that we have like trained PT specialists doing training on the floor, and all of this integration might work out for the better, right? So how do you guys want to deliver that?
Mark and I have talked about like what like an ideal scenario is for specifically the interaction between a true physical therapist and say a strength coach.
Yep.
And like if you had walked in here, the idea is that you wouldn't be able to tell who's who.
Amen.
You know what I mean? And that's because, you're not just seeing a physical therapist because you broke an ankle
Yep.
or you tore an ACL. And on the flip side of that, you might have done that and you're working with the strength coach because he's been properly educated by the guidance of the physical therapist to do things that are appropriate for his scope of practice, well within his legal rights to do, and he does not infringe on anything that lives outside of that. And that's when a direct handoff occurs so that the physical therapist who could do that thing doesn't, because he has to do the only thing he can do for that client. And that's when it really becomes more of it. Like, look at football. Like Tom Brady, one of the greatest football players ever, wasn't paid to block anyone.
Ever.
But they paid blockers to let him do what he does.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And
So,
the whole
like,
team won.
yeah, and the team, and that's where like the team is also inclusive or including the end user. who should benefit from all of these interactions.
And I'm going to get super weird, nerdy, outer thought on you for a second. But if you look at teams, your brain is like the quarterback, but your brain is like insane. All it wants is drugs and happiness and satisfaction from chemicals, right? The rest of your body is like the linemen are your skin. Your muscles are like your receivers and your running backs. Your bones are maybe your tight ends, right? These stronger things, they're fortified. Like, if you look at the human body like a football team, it takes all of it working together. So the reason I'm bringing this up is I always say to somebody, if you have a bum shoulder, but like the rest of you is perfect, it doesn't fucking matter, which is why Bill Belichick and the Patriots used to be able to put whoever the hell they wanted. Yeah. As long as you could catch a ball from 10 to 15 yards, you could play on the Patriots. Like, he'll get you open. So once we recognize that in the human body, and we realize we're blocking or trying to maintain this thing up here, it all becomes different. And the better we are as a total, the better all of us become.
Right. So let's just chase down that football analogy one more, or actually relating it directly to the Patriots, right? The best team, probably historically.
Yeah. Organizationally,
right? From the top down. What made them so great? Well, like Marco just said, Tom Brady had how many tackles and guards and over the years, everything, right? But what made them fantastic is that when Tom Brady, who was at the helm of that, was communicating, right? Or the team was communicating, the organization was communicating at its highest level, everything worked seamlessly. They won in a variety of different ways. Offensively, defense, didn't really matter, right? But communication was at the forefront.
Yep.
So tying it back into how the healthcare system should be working, right? And we've been kind of beating a dead horse with this, is that communication's the key.
Yeah.
Right? That's what links all disciplines together. Yeah. And that's the thing that really shapes outcomes. So it's now imagine a football team that had Tom Brady as a quarterback, but then had an all-pro guard, an all-pro tackle, an all-pro wide receiver, an all-pro tight end. How nasty would that offense be? It would be unbelievable. Now in healthcare, if you had the best MD, the best PT, the best trainer, imagine, and they all communicated, you'd have an all-star team.
Yeah. And one of the coolest things, back to that analogy as well with the Patriots, is Robert Kraft, for whatever he is, but as an owner of the football team, allowed Belichick to do his job.
Yeah.
So it's funny because people walk in here and just think I'm in charge of their healthcare because I'm the MD. But I always tell them no. It's you better go down there and meet with these guys because they're really in charge of your healthcare. I might be okay, a little chemical oversight, biochemical, maybe deeper knowledge, whatever. But I'm not really the boots on the ground, and your knowledge of musculoskeletal, I have no idea. We talk about things that might not be chemical related, but movement related that I'm so far off on that you educate me all the time. And that's where the progress is made. So a Kraft knew that, and he was like, here, Bill, take who do you want to recruit? Who do you want to draft? Who do you want to fire? Why? Because that's the guy coaching.
Yeah.
So it's another thing, we're bringing you in, not because you're just a PT. We've actually, whether you like it or not, this is a long process of vetting, right? We've known you for a while, whatever. So now we're at a time where it's yeah, man, this is going to work. Not to make it seem like you're trying to get into our club, but for us, we don't really want to let anybody in here who's not on the page with us, right? And it doesn't matter, friend or whatever, we just won't do business with you. We can still be friends. But at this point, we've realized that your addition to this team is going to be huge. In terms of accountability as a service, right? In Access gyms, you manage yourself. In traditional PT, you get a sheet of exercises. In an ecosystem, the execution is monitored. Now, I read this little lead into today's conversation yesterday briefly, and I was sitting in my office across the gym. And I looked out of my window and I realized, holy shit, I'm watching everybody I treat. I'm watching the trainers, the PT, everything. How cool is it to be in an environment like that? And how do we translate that into what we're doing for the consumer, right? You're going to have so many eyes on you that nothing will get missed.
Yeah, I think how reassuring is that?
Yeah.
Right? If I was a client, right, that was coming to a train, again, I am a client. I train here.
Yeah. We're actually all clients of each other.
Exactly. Yeah. So exactly. Literally, right? Yeah. So if I'm a client and I see that in a facility that I can go to that literally there is direct oversight.
Yep.
From everybody, and I know my MD's there, I know my my trainers there, my coach. How reassuring is that, right? You just know that if at any point I have a question around something or something doesn't feel right or something I can just go right to whoever I need to go, right? Like whatever level. And then like ultimately too, whoever I take my inquiry to, they're going to know who the right person is to send me to, right?
Well, we talked about this last week. Somebody called me and was like, I pay this much money to come here. Like, I don't know who. Blah, blah. I go, dude, you're complaining to me. He's like, yeah. And I was like, I'm the fucking MD. I see you every day.
Yeah.
20 minutes a day. What are you talking about? And it like clicked. And he's like, oh. And I was like, I know everything going on in your life, man. We don't have to talk much because I see you literally for 3 hours a week. You can't interact with more people. And he was like, whoa. And it clicked for him. Right. And I think those eyes on people are a huge deal. You've been at this game forever. Do me a big favor. I don't even think people know. I want to start with Mike. Give people a breakdown of truly what you can do for them physically, meaning like programming, nutrition, like how you do it. And then truly like what you can offer in terms of PT, meaning most people think PT, like truly, I even thought it. PT for me was like, oh, move my arm, like a resistance band with such little tension that I don't even know what the fuck it's doing. What is PT now, right? So tell me the difference on what it is between that little bit of movement and like overall general exercise. And I think this is the blend. So start with Mike, I think, in terms of what you can give people, because it's actually incredible. And I don't think people appreciate it as much as it should be appreciated.
Again, I always like to zoom out to zoom in. So let's just look at the optics of having true healthcare providers, medically licensed people in a gym. What does that do from an optics standpoint when someone comes into the gym for their first time and they see people interacting with a medical doctor or a physical therapist? Their first initial thought from prior experience is like, what's wrong with that person?
Right.
Where now it's like, no, that person's fine. That person isn't hurt. That person isn't sick. But they're that way because of what they're doing now.
Yep.
So even when I was just a coach without, these types of services in here, the whole thought was, especially from the athletic background that I come from, is like, how do we get you to the next level? Yeah. So a middle school athlete wanting to play varsity, a varsity kid wanting to play college. Yep. So it's like all this really clear vision of a goal and maybe a finish line and the reward. Yep. And it was really easy to reverse engineer or back into the things they must do objectively. Well, you got to be bigger, you got to be stronger, you got to be faster, you got to be healthier. So it was really easy to sell the idea of what the result should look like. Yeah. My problem with general fitness, and I used to complain about this all the time, and I'll say this, I always thought it was a big miss. Yeah. But I didn't do anything for like 15 years that I was in or 10 years.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard.
And then one day I was like, you know what? I got to stop complaining. And if I think I can do it better, then put your money where your mouth is.
Fucking go do it. Yeah, it's
sick. So what I essentially did was I just took the performance framework to general fitness. That's it. Yeah. That's the secret sauce right there. So that means, do we have a result? Do we have a timeline? Do we have accountability? Do our clients or prospects have high agency to perform the things we're asking for? And the only real difference outside of like working with a kid who wants to play college sports is how do you extrapolate the purpose that will drive the performance in the adult space? Because health is this weird thing to regular people.
It's impossible for people.
It's really hard
because we all die.
Right. Correct.
Yeah.
Right. So
sorry.
No, but it because it's like, yeah, I can on average, I will live for the next 30 something years. Yeah. Without doing any of these things. Yeah. But no one really appreciates the quality of life that they will have in those 20, 30, 40 plus years. Yeah. And that's where I like the reframing of what we're doing on the adult side or the general fitness side has really been like our main focus. And that's why like I all of a sudden wanted to include these other people and services and ideas in the matrix. It's an interesting thing because like the training in sports, people think a gym is just for sports, like train for athletics, but life is your sport. You are an athlete of life. I don't care what you say, whether you want to say athletics or not. When you wake up in the morning, you have to stand up and you got to go do things. If you stand up in the morning and you go do stuff throughout the day and you have to stop because you're too tired,
you're not conditioned enough to be a life athlete.
Yeah.
Does this make sense? And then the bench is when you go to the hospital. And then you got to sit on the bench for a while. And hopefully you get back off the bench on the starting team, because let me tell you something about the hospital. The bench players at the hospital, they don't develop. They don't really care. If you're not a starter, you're on the bench. If you ain't a heart surgery, cancer patient, whatever, and you're just kind of this lingering, burning sub, you sit on the bench with no development, and you know what happens? You leave the team. Yeah. That's when you die, right? So the whole goal is you got to be a starter. And it's life. Unfortunately, I don't know what to tell people. Like, everyone's like, that's a pessimistic outlook. Actually, I'm a true optimist. So much so to the point that I know I'm going to die, and I'm willing to continue to bang my head on the wall not to. The ultimate, right? The ultimate life athlete is what I want to be, with the help of other people. How do you then take what he said and translate into your world of like, true, I'm a PT, into more like, yeah, I'm a PT, but I'm more like health coach, health advisor. Like, I don't even want to say doctor, coach anymore. I think we just need to be like health advisors, like all of us.
Well, so this is actually, before I answer that, I want to circle back real quick to something that Mike said.
Right.
And this is a question that we can frame this to all of us.
Yeah.
Because I have a clear thought on this, right? So, Mike, your statement that you said was like, as we're trying to help somebody like in the adult fitness,
Yeah.
right? Like, high school kids, college, like making that transitional ladder, very clear cut.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
I know what I need to do to play collegiate sports, right?
Yep.
It was very, very clear apparent. But like, it's way more ambiguous as an adult on like, what is health
Yeah.
to me, right?
Yeah.
So for both of you guys, right? Because we all talk about this with our individual clientele, right? Like, how can we frame that? Like, how do we go through and help somebody, guide them to like what that actual framework looks like?
Yeah.
You know?
It ain't easy. I mean, you've been at it for 20 plus years. I'm banging my head at the wall too. It's just, it's hard to convince people that they gotta like get in the life game, you know?
Right.
Effort.
I mean, part of the motivation, and this might be a little bit more based on who I've worked with, you know, on my personal roster, are entrepreneurs, small business owners, and they feel the cost of doing business as a high level doctor or business owner or whatever. And they understand that there's always trade-offs. Like, you go through a whole NFL season, you're not walking out without a sprain,
You
strain,
have to.
or whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I don't know why that should be perceived different than running a business or being a
Yeah,
high-level professional.
Yeah, it should.
So, but the cost is usually more insidious.
Yeah.
So I gained 20 pounds.
Yeah.
I drink a little bit too much. I don't eat well. I don't sleep well. And it's like, if you can tie that to like an incentive like money or success or whatever, it was really easy for me to, you know, use the athlete analogy. It's like, if the athlete doesn't take care of himself in the off season, he's going to have trouble in season. And maybe that's based on a contract or based on, you know, like incentives in his contract, whatever. But helping, I've yet to meet a person that has gotten healthier that hasn't done better in their task, their job, their role in life. Business owners make more money. Doctors make more money. They help more people. They're equipped to do more output. So when I think of this idea of performance, it is very much context driven and task specific. So even if you're a stay-at-home dad, if you take better care of yourself, you will show up better for your kids, for your wife, for your family, in every other aspect of your life. There will be benefit.
Yeah.
Every aspect.
Yeah.
And that's the performance that you should be looking at. Like,
Yeah.
I would hate to go and if my kids, when they're older, be like, yeah, remember when dad was always cranky and hungry and tired and drank a lot and what like, I don't, like, that's my legacy to them. That's what they'll inherit from me. And that's not what I want.
I met a little kid somewhere that said, or I heard a story like, yeah, my mommy's not here. She's at the bar drinking. That was the statement from like an 8-year-old, right? That's not a good leadership statement. Like, that kid's done.
Yeah.
I think a huge part of our issue is one major thing in society right now. And I think it's in a current event that everybody's paying attention to. I don't need to say it out loud, but the guy who owned the island, right? And what we're seeing is an unfortunate lesson that should not be taken home by the youth or anybody who has a fucking brain. Money should not outweigh the law. But the minute you tell a population of humans that money outweighs the law, they translate that into health as well. So people assume if I make a lot of money, I can go buy my health. What they don't recall is that The legal system here is purchasable. The Grim Reaper doesn't give a shit. If you don't give them the effort for yourself, through yourself, you die. You can't buy your way out of it. And I know it sounds so brutal, but it is what it is, right? And I think the cool thing about this, we've never been exposed to healthcare. It is 2026, right? Think about how long we've been practicing some version of healthcare, right? Back to the Greeks, even before that. All of these things trying to get people healthier and healthier. We never had healthcare. We never knew enough biology to actually intervene in preventative medicine. But now we do. And we know metabolisms are alterable. They used to want you to not think so they could keep you dying, especially women. Oh yeah, your metabolism's shot now. Come on, people. Like if you really think logically, they've been just destroying us forever. I want everybody to know, in no unclear or uncertain terms, we are trying to invent healthcare and take over the healthcare system. This is not like, oh, we're trying to like just sustain a little bit. No, we're trying to optimize healthcare. The same way people see no end in terms of life and why should I continue with my health and put so much effort into preventive care if there's an outcome I know. Well, I know the outcome might not be maybe I take over the world of healthcare, but I'm going to try my hardest. And one day I would love to be the Amazon. Like I would love RTS to be the Amazon of healthcare. Why not? Because the trends out there are going in the other direction. So in a final, I think we got about a couple minutes left. In a final somewhat synopsis, like I would love just a mission statement and see where our goals are headed in terms of our deliverable. And I think, Mike, in terms of the RTS brand, you started it, you've built it. We're trying to help you keep it going and keep it making a name for itself, because what you started, I mean, choked me up a little bit earlier. Unfortunately, you know, it happens, but like you were my inspiration for transition, and I've known you my whole fucking life. Like think about how crazy that is, right? What is your mission and what do you want RTS to accomplish? And we'll say this every podcast, I don't care, but give me your true root drive and why you survive in this industry so long.
I think it really boils down to like how I perceive what the RTS stands for and what it should stand for in the future. And it really comes down to the people.
Yeah.
So in our business, there's only two people that I care about, our employees and our members, and the people that we serve. So that's your patients, my clients, our shared whatever. So it is imperative that the selection process of picking the right people as part of the team, as well as onboarding the right clientele, because if we just nail that, like there will be very nice growth patterns. Yeah. Because those people that benefit greatly will talk and bringing family and friends because we're doing right by them, and they can see through distinct contrasts of what they can't get anywhere else. Yeah. So my focus is on, obviously at this point, like in a management position of getting the right personnel in place. Yep. And then they become the distributors of what we're doing and the message. And then they bring that and materialize that in the lives of our clients and patients.
Yeah. And the beauty of this, we are trying to train and we are successfully doing it. You know, we're bringing a new aspect to PT. I have Kathleen, who is my equivalent. I do not want people to think I have a PA who's like my subservient, lesser healthcare. No, I'm here to empower the PAs, the APRNs. If you want to grab a hold of healthcare, come practice medicine. Yeah. I'll teach you the ways, because like the doctors of the world have proven like they're not very interested in healthcare. So if you're an APRN or a PA and you learn it the right way, or you're an MD and you learn it the right way, get involved in healthcare. Come. And our whole deliverable is exactly what you said. We work for the person who's paying us, which is the client. When you go to a doctor or a lawyer or any business that is sponsored by somebody else, they're not working for you.
You are the third party.
You are the third party. Yeah. We have no third parties. So much so to the point, yesterday I was on the phone, or 2 days ago on a Zoom call with a national company, lab brand, destroying their people because they have delayed my clients' success stories. And I found myself so emotional about it. I was like, holy shit, like I'm fucking really bought into this, right? Like I'm on the phone with $1 billion company screaming at them because I got somebody in North Haven, Connecticut that couldn't get their labs drawn. And you know what the answer was? I got what I wanted. Why? Because they know how intense my interest in their healthcare is. Leave us with your mission statement, what you want to deliver to the people, what you want to give the members of the RTS community who would be willing to engage with you, and what we can supply them with for future needs.
Yeah, no, I think as I kind of step back and look at like what my overall like vision and mission has always been since like entering this realm, has always been just trying to provide like the highest level of care that I possibly can to empower the individual.
Amen.
Right? Like it has to be empowerment.
Yeah.
Right? Like if that's left out of the mix, what we're doing is futile.
Useless.
Right? So the thought process is that like, you know, through this model of empowerment, this is what's going to go through and kind of shape the direction on where healthcare goes,
Yes.
you know, from here on out. Right. So, you know, as we're looking at like how we integrate, you know, collaboratively into the system, it's having any individual knows who would leverage any part of our services, mine included, is that like we're going to make the best decisions that we possibly can for you to get you back to where you need to go and to get you in the, you know, the realm and the spectrum and utilizing the ecosystem at its most optimized manner.
Yes.
If that makes sense.
That episode was spectacular. I love talking. I love nerding out. You're clearly a student of science, a student of life, a student of social cues. I know everybody here loves your services. I haven't encountered anybody who said anything negative. Anybody out there who'd like to inquire, send us a DM, an email, whatever you want to do, and let's stay aggressively healthy, and we'll see you guys in a couple weeks. Adios.
See ya.